All right, so this week we're going to discuss chapter 7, which is all about early adulthood. So, early adulthood is a transitional time between adolescence and regular adulthood that's marked by a search for an identity and deciding what to do in the future and focusing less on the present. So, there are 5 features that we'll discuss. That's identity exploration, instability, self focus, feeling in between, and optimism. According to Eric Erickson, young adulthood or early adulthood is the time when intimacy versus isolation is the main conflict a person experiences. When a person decides to engage in intimacy, they have to want to be selfish and to engage in joint experiences of pleasure and a deep devotion to somebody else. Sometimes people can have difficulties during this particular stage because they could be isolated and lonely and have a fear of relationships with others. And Erickson said that healthy intimacy to heterosexuals. He limited his study to healthy intimacy to in heterosexuals and focused on men. Friendship is also important during this time because people have a natural need to belong and to establish relationships with other people. Most friendships will be based on proximity and similarity. So, how close are we to each other and do we like the same things? There's a number of cross race friendships that tend to dwindle throughout the lifespan. So, when we're trying to choose who we want to be friends with, we look at a number of different qualities, such as do they keep our secrets? Are they loyal, warm, affectionate, supportive, frank? Do they have a good sense of humor? Sometimes people can fall in love after they have developed a friendship with somebody else. And most relationships will follow that natural progression where they interact for a long period of time. They seek out each other's company. They share physical intimacy. They're willing to share positive, negatives, and criticism and praise. They agree on the goals they hold for the relationship. They react to situations and become more similar to each other in their reactions. Their psychological well being is tied to their success of their relationship, and they see themselves as a couple. Love differs qualitatively from liking because it involves physical arousal, all encompassing interest in another person, recurrent fantasies about the other individual, rapid swings of emotion, and closeness, passion, and exclusivity. Passion and companionship love are 2 different types of love that can vary depending on the person. In many cultures, passionate romantic love is a foreign concept. So, according to Robert Sternberg, there is a triangular theory of love. He said that love is made up of intimacy, passion, and commitment. He also said that there are unique combinations of love that can be formed, such as the ones you see on the screen. And here's a chart that kind of can explain those combinations of love that he said might exist. You can see that chart fully. When we seek a spouse, love isn't the only thing that'll matter. When people are asked, individuals from the United States, Japan, or Brazil said that they would not marry without love. Individuals from Pakistan and India say they would. And of course, those countries may have higher incidences of arranged marriages. In China, men ranked good health most important in a relationship, and women rated emotional stability and maturity as being important. In South Africa, with the Zulu, men rated emotional stability first, and women rated dependable character first. Men typically prefer physically attractive partners, where women prefer spouses who are ambitious and industrious, who can do things. But all in all, humans seek certain characteristics in mates that will maximize their availability of beneficial genes and thinking about how survival of the fittest can happen. Across all cultures, love and mutual attraction are important factors in a relationship. Dependability, emotional stability, pleasing disposition, and intelligence are important. And critics argue that cultural similarities reflect gender stereotyping and have nothing to do with evolution. So when people try to shift out a spouse, they seek to screen the perfect candidate to be their spouse. So they have to figure out what things are most important to them and determine which things they're willing to sacrifice. African American women find it difficult to find a spouse according to the marriage gradient, and men have larger pools to choose from, which give them more options. Most gay and lesbians who seek loving and long term, meaningful relationships seek out others who might have those same traits they're looking for. Their relationships are not different from any of the relationships that are desired by heterosexuals. According to Paul Shaver, the influence of an infant's attachment style affects their romantic relationship. So, whether or not they had a secure, avoidant, or ambivalent attachment to their parents will impact how they attach to others later on. And so, here's a review over some of those different types of love that people might seek out in a relationship. Here's the rest of those criteria. And let's go ahead and do a review question. According to Eric Erickson, adults spend their early adult years, A, B, C, or D. And hopefully you chose D, developing relationships with others. Here's another question. Blank love is the strong affection we have for those with whom our lives are deeply involved. A, B, C, or D? And the correct answer is going to be D, companionate love. Now let's talk about the course of relationships. Cohabitation occurs when people live together. And over the last 3 decades, there's been a decline in the number of married couples. There's an increase in the number of people who cohabitate. About 7.5 million people are cohabitating in the United States today. Married couples make up the minority of households. Most young adults will cohabitate in their early 20s, and that might be a practice for them for marriage. And the chances of divorce are higher for people who cohabitate. Marriage is the preferred alternative for early adulthood. Many people view it as the right thing to do if they're in a relationship. Spouses provide security and financial well being, and they feel the sexual role. Marriage offers is the only acceptable way to have children according to society. And there are, of course, legal benefits and protections as well when a couple is married. So when we think about stats for marriage in the United States, fewer U.S. citizens are married than in the 1890s, and that might be attributable to a high divorce rate. And also people marrying later in life. The average age for men is 29.5 and 27.4 for women to get married. And 90% of people eventually wed, even if they don't do so in their 20s. So there are a few things that make marriages work. Partners who show affection, partners who communicate the positive, partners who see themselves as parts of an interdependent couple, experiencing social homogeny, having similar interests and agreeing on role distributions, and only about half of all marriages remain intact. Early marital conflict happens nearly half of newly married couples, because they could have difficulty transitioning from adolescence to adulthood. They could have difficulty developing an identity apart from their spouse. They could struggle to find time with their spouse. And for many people, that newlywed period is the happiest time of their entire married life. Some people don't want to be married and choose to stay single. Singlehood has increased over the last several decades, with 20% of women and 30% of men living single lives. And some of their primary reasons for doing this is because they might have a negative view of marriage. They might believe that marriage is too restrictive. They don't encounter someone with whom to spend the rest of their lives. And they could value independence, autonomy, and freedom. But there are some pitfalls to staying single, such as the stigmatization that exists for women, a lack of companionship and sexual outlets, and a concern for the financial future. There are a number of things that might cause a couple to decide to have children. The biggest reason is usually economics. The U.S. government estimates it takes about $233,000 to support a child until he or she is 18 years of age. And if you add on the cost of college, that's about 300 additional $1,000. And childcare and other expenses could make that price double. When couples decide to have children, they enjoy watching them grow. They get fulfillment from seeing their children's accomplishments. They enjoy the close bond that's for them. They love seeing them be successful. They have someone to take care of them in their old age, and they have someone to maintain their family business, provide companionship, and there's a strong societal norm with more than 90% of married couples having a child. Sometimes unwanted pregnancies occur, and those usually occur in the younger, poorer, or less educated couples. Some couples make the decision that is independent of marriage to also have a child. About 59% of women are married when they have children. More than half of births to women under the age of 30 occur outside of marriage. And young adult women with college degrees choose to be married before children. Contraceptive methods have resulted in a dramatic decrease in the family size. In the 1930s, about 70% of Americans wanted three or more children. By the 1990s, that shrunk to 40% of women or families. And today, most people have two children. In 1957, there were 3.7 children born on average per couple. Today, the rate is 1.9. There has been a decline in family size, and some of those reasons might be more women using contraceptives, more women working, women delaying having children into their 30s, and a high cost of raising children. When both people in a relationship earn money, 75% of married women will work outside the home. The workload of paid and unpaid work are nearly identical. Husbands are more likely to do chores that can be planned in advance, and wives do more of the immediate needs, and wives also experience more stress and anxiety. So after a couple has decided to have a child, there are some positive and negatives that can occur. There could be a dramatic shift in the roles for spouses, and John Gottman said that marital satisfaction can stay steady and rise after the birth of a child. There are three factors that help couples weather the stress of having children, and that is building a fondness and affection for each other, remaining aware of events in each other's lives and honoring those, and considering problems as controllable and solvable. Co-parenting can also work well. 20% of gay men and lesbian women become parents. Pre-child homosexual couples divide the housework equally. And then after the child, one person tends to take over childcare and the other works outside the home. Research has shown that children raised in homosexual homes show no difference in adjustment compared to those raised in heterosexual homes. So here are some things that we could review over the course of a relationship. And there's some more things for us to review that we just discussed. And it's time for a review question. When asked why they want to have children, most young adults cite blank reasons. And the correct answer, you should have said, are psychological reasons. Now let's talk about having a career. So, according to George Valiant, he proposed that there are stages to developing what he called career consolidation. This usually occurs between ages of 20 and 40. That's where career concerns focus on, take a back seat because there's a focus on intimacy. And many people argue that Valiant's sample was elite men from the 1930s and can't be generalized to the public. There are also some other reasons why people might work. It could be because of extrinsic or monetary tangible rewards. It could also be because of intrinsic personal pleasure that's attained from working. There was a Puritan work ethic that said that work is important in and of itself. Work also can contribute to a sense of personal identity. It may be the center of a person's social life, and it can help determine a person's status. Job satisfaction is also important because it often depends on status, the nature of the job, and variety. Job satisfaction increases when workers have input into the nature of their jobs, and supervisors have more influence and hence more job satisfaction. According to Ginsburg's career choice theory, there are stages to choosing a career. There's the fantasy period, the tentative period, and the realistic period. Critics argue it's too simplistic and may overstate the choices that are available to people, especially those who are from lower socioeconomic levels. According to Holland, choosing a career should be based on a personality type: realistic, intellectual, social, conventional, enterprising, and artistic. Many critics will say that not everyone fits neatly into a particular personality type for a job. When it comes to gender and a career, it's illegal to advertise only to men or women. And until the 1960s, jobs were advertised in two sections. They were targeting men or women. Women were considered most appropriate for communal professions, occupations that are associated with relationships, while men were perceived as being best suited for agentic, agentic professions and occupations that were associated with getting things accomplished. Women are often underrepresented in male-dominated professions like engineering and computer programming, and that's why there's been such a big push for more women in STEM or STEAM programs. Women, on average, tend to earn less money than men in many jobs, sometimes even doing the same thing. Between the 1950s and 2010, women in the labor force increased from 35% to more than 60%. Women make up 47% of the labor force, and women and minorities in high status usually have visible professional roles that hit the glass ceiling. So, as you're trying to choose a career, you should systematically evaluate your choices, know yourself, create a balance sheet that lists pros and cons, try out different careers through paid or unpaid internships. Remember that are no permanent mistakes. And also remember it is reasonable to expect that shifting values, interests, abilities, and life circumstances might make a different career more appropriate later in life than the one that was chosen early adulthood. So here are some other things that we can review for this section. And another question. According to Valiant, during young adulthood, individuals become centered on their careers. This stage is known as, hopefully you said A, career consolidation. And that's everything I wanted to talk to you guys about in this chapter about early adulthood.